Hello, welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson-Ridley, and today I am joined by Dr. Renee Wellenstein, who is a double board certified doctor who has been working with women for over 20 years. And due to her own personal health challenges, she stepped outside the box of conventional medicine to take a radically different approach to heal herself from the deep depths of burnout. About a decade ago, Dr. Renee was living what she thought was her dream life. She was an extremely busy OBGYN, married to a doctor with toddler twins, and moved to a quaint, quiet town in the country. And then in 2012, Dr. Renee fell off her horse during a riding lesson and broke her back. She not only struggled with severe back pain, but with fatigue and the inability to focus. Her doctor diagnosed her with depression, but her symptoms did not improve after trying 2 different antidepressants. And while going through all of this, she finally stumbled into the world of functional medicine, which has brought her here today, where we're going to dive into kind of her own journey and a lot of stuff related to libido, which I'm really excited about. So, Dr. Renee, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I guess you shared a little bit of your story with me kind of before we started recording, but I find it interesting enough that if you want to share it with our listeners too, I like to hear kind of what brought my guests to where they are and the work that they do now.
Yeah, well, it was quite the journey, and it's really not how I expected it to end. But I moved to the country from a suburb of New York City, and back in '08, my twins were 1, and I was living what I thought was the dream life. I had dreamed. I moved to the country, got another dream job in OBGYN. Married my Prince Charming, and of course, what do I do when I move to the country is I get the horse that I had wanted since the age of 7. I grew up on a dairy farm. My dad was a dairy farmer, and he was not fond of horses, but I wanted a horse. And he said no at the age of 7. And I said, you wait, I'll have that horse. Well, at 39, I got that horse and fell off that horse. And I always say that's where my story begins, because really so many changes have occurred since then, and my life has completely changed 180 degrees. So from that fall, I broke my back, and as I told you, I was Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall that could not be put back together. And back then, I'd always said I'd never wanted back surgery. Like I took care of so many women with back issues. I'm like, oh gosh, botched. I don't want to say botched back surgeries, but they
Yeah.
just never got better. And here I was laying on a gurney in the ER with a broken back. And I think the best words were when the orthopedic surgeon said, we can't do surgery, it's inoperable. They essentially are going to have to heal on their own. I was like, oh, thank goodness. But then 6 weeks later, I was like, just put them back together again so I can get back to work. Because as the doctor, we're like work, 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 work. And if we're not and we're sitting still, it's just, we're shamed. We just don't feel like we're being productive. So interestingly enough, over the course of the next couple of years, my scope of practice for OBGYN actually was significantly limited because of my injury. I could no longer operate or deliver. So I was pretty much stuck in the clinic doing pap smears all day, which is not why I went into OBGYN.
Yeah.
I went in there, I just didn't feel like I was making the life changes that I had made prior. I wasn't changing lives. I wasn't bringing babies into the world anymore. And so I many nights I'd come home to my husband and say, gosh, I just don't feel fulfilled. Like this is not why I went into medicine and gave up half my life training for OBGYN. And then, interestingly enough, I started noticing a lot more of these symptoms because I wasn't running as fast as I had been in the past. I was a little slower physically, mentally, on so many levels. And there was a huge mindset shift for me to start healing my body as well, dealing with chronic pain. And I don't know if any other listeners deal with this, but it's a huge, you go through this grieving process when you have an injury like that. That's completely life-changing. And I went through all of the phases of grieving, the anger and the resentment, why me? And I was sort of stuck in that mode for a couple of years. And on top of all that, I started having these other symptoms of, I can't get out of bed in the morning. I have no energy all day. I was gaining weight. I was, aside from work, I really didn't feel like doing anything. I was making really poor food choices. And of course, I got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I went to my doctor and she was like, well, it sounds like depression. And it was interesting because even at the first mention of that, I said, well, I thought about that because I know all the diagnoses, but I'm like, it just doesn't feel like what depression should feel like. But you know what? I want to feel better. So just give me that pill and shove me in that box and give me that pill, which she did. And over the course of the next 3 months, I did not feel any better. And I actually had all the side effects of the medication. So of course, what happens is when you fail one medication, it's not that you had the wrong diagnosis, you have the wrong medication. So I tried a second. And it was when that second one was failing that I told my husband, I remember laying in bed at night going, I can't go on living like this. This is just not life. And it was really scary for me to have thoughts of no longer living because that had never crossed my mind. But when I felt so hopeless and helpless. And here I was in the medical community and still felt that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how do other people feel and do this? And I don't know, it was for another reason I got put in touch with a functional medicine doc. And she was called an anti-aging doctor.
Mhm.
And I was at that point selling anti-aging skincare for something fun to do in my life because I felt so bored professionally.
Yeah.
And, it's just so low energy. I'm like, ugh, I'm just grasping for the next thing to make me feel better. And so I got on the phone with her one evening and she's like, I have my own skincare. You can, I don't need the skincare, but let's talk about your health. And interestingly enough, in that one conversation, she's like, yeah, I think you have adrenal issues. I think you have some sort of adrenal fatigue, which is what we used to call it.
Right.
And, you don't need medication. You need this, but come to the office. We'll confirm it. And her office was 3.5 hours from where I live, but I'm willing to make the trip. Right. No one else was helping me. And as we're talking, I'm sitting in bed and it was right before bed. I'm Googling adrenal, just, fatigue. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. And then I started Googling functional medicine because right after that, she said, you know what, you want to join me in practice. I want to open a satellite office closer to you. And it's much needed in the state of New York. And would you like to work for me? And I was like, oh my gosh, you just offered me a job. So I'm fervently, Googling functional medicine. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is how I'm going to get back to changing lives. And so in one full swoop, I got my diagnosis. I kind of got a little treatment plan started and I had a career change.
Mhm.
And I always say my husband went in to take a shower at the beginning of that call. And when he came out, I told him, I said, well, I have adrenal fatigue. I'm starting this, and this. And by the way, I'm leaving the hospital and I'm starting a fellowship in functional medicine. He goes, how long was I in that shower for? And, interestingly enough, that was the beginning of my intuition, like listening to my gut, which had been suppressed for so many years. As a doc, you're very black and white, very concrete. And this is really where I let my body like tell me like, yes, no, this is what you have to do. This is your next right step. And, in one phone call, I just had hope again and I didn't feel so helpless. And I think that was what sealed the deal for me is that I could be that beam of light for other women that have been to every other doctor or isn't getting the answers, is not feeling any better, that there are other ways of getting healthy. And it's not necessarily getting shoved into that box of a diagnosis and a pill. So that's my big story of how I got into functional medicine. And that was 7 years ago. And I've not regretted it one day because I absolutely love, love, love this alternative medicine that we practice.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And everyone on the show has heard my story, but similar, I'm actually still in a wrist brace because I shared with you, I'm a chiropractor, but I tore my wrist up and retore it after surgery. And so I'm finally done. But this world, there's so much that's fulfilling about it. And I think it's inspiring to hear stories because a lot of the women I work with are either going through, slumps in their career or like realizing they haven't been working in their true passion or, and so it's inspiring for me and for them, I think, to hear, the stories of us who have found another way to fulfill like what we think we were here for when life has happened to kind of take.
Yeah. I was grasping at straws for those couple of years because I knew I wasn't fulfilled. And as a doc, you're trained to do one thing, and that's, work for a hospital or a practice and see patients. And, honestly, what's out there in the world of conventional medicine is like you either do that or you work for an insurance company or a pharmaceutical company or a device company. I'm like, whoa, no, that's not lighting me up. And versus just switching into the alternative medicine world and like still doing what we were doing, but just approaching health. And, at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same reason, to get people healthy, whatever way either they want to or collaboratively with their regular doctor.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, the next big jump was from the brick and mortar space to virtual online, and I did that before the pandemic, a year prior to the pandemic. But it's another one of those for your audience. Like it's scary, no doubt about it. But you really, for me, I lost my brick and mortar job 3 years ago, and it was kind of like, okay, crap, what do I do now? Like again, in that doctor sense, okay, I'm still in the office setting. Now
Right.
what do I do? Like, can you do this doctor thing online? Like, and I almost left medicine, but I just have way too much of a passion for it that
Yeah.
I just had to figure another way out. And at the age of, now I'm now 48, so I was 45, I was tired of starting over again, like over and over. I'm like, okay, we're just going to start over doing things right the first time and doing them for myself and
Yeah.
designing my life that I want for the
Yeah.
next, 30, 40, 50 years. I just told my daughter, I said, I can never picture retiring. I love what I do too much. And as long as I continue to design my life, um, and still have purpose, of course, but still design it to the point where I'm not getting burned out like I had
Yeah.
several times since 2012. I can keep going and doing what I love. So
Yeah. And that's so key. And I know you talk a lot about burnout too, in your world, and that's obviously something I focus on. But um, before, and I want to talk about libido too, because I know you've kind of put a niche in that space. But let's talk about burnout and really designing, being able to design your life in a way where you aren't heading towards that. Because even for myself, like I've been on this journey as well, and I won't share exactly how old I am, but I'm a little bit younger than you. But I can still sense, like, with starting my new business, because I retired from the chiropractic world and took on this more virtual space too. But I'm like, I can see myself doing the same patterning, and so it's like I've really been focused this summer on, like, I only work 2 days a week and I have so much free time, and I'm just like, and that is okay. Like, it's okay. We don't have to fill every minute of every day. So what thoughts do you have around, that you can share with listeners around burnout?
yeah, I definitely think, I've just started studying human design as well. And I do think there are, because everything I do in life, I sort of pull back and say, why? Why are some women more prone to burnout than others, right? Like you can take two women doing the same exact thing and one will have burnout prior to the other. And it comes down to genetics as well, but and lifestyle and all of that. But it's just our design, our like what makes us tick. And I do think, there's certain personality types, like probably both of us, that really we thrive on that go, and do. And I'm what they call a generator. So like I enjoy helping people and like putting my energy out there and energizing people. And that's not at a detriment to myself. But the problem is like I can ride that high for so long to the
Right.
point where I'm like the same as you. All of a sudden one day I crash and like, whoop.
Yeah.
And I think it's just getting comfortable in not always doing and setting those boundaries and saying no and asking others, because again, I also come from that high performance world, myself included. And I, again, take care of women that are like myself and you,
Yeah.
that want to just, they don't have time for burnout, right? Like we don't have time for that. But I think the biggest part of number one, you got to heal from the burnout, but number two, recognizing when you start going down and implementing certain things in your life, like you have,
Mhm.
of like taking those down days just to refill your own cup, and delegating, like, what don't you have to do? What do you have to do? What do you have to do today? What can you put off? I always say my 3 Ds, and there's like a fourth D, and they're like, what do I have to do? What can I delegate? What can I completely delete off my list? What doesn't have to be done? And or delay, which can kind of go into that,
Yeah.
like, do delay, you'll do it, but down the road.
Right.
Because I think we as women, we wake up with all these high expectations of what we're going to get done in a day. And at the end of the day, when you only get 3 of those 10 things done, it's like, whoa, we feel like a failure. And those negative thoughts over and over of like, oh, I didn't get it done again. Like, what is wrong with me? Whoa, that's a huge trigger for burnout, right? Like if you
Yeah.
have all of the physical things going on and just that mental, like, I don't know the statistic, like 80% of our thoughts in a day are negative towards ourselves. It's like, whoa, like huge wake up call, ladies, that,
Yeah.
just be more loving. Cause if you don't say it to your friend, your best friend, or, anyone else for that matter, why are we talking to ourselves that way? And I'm right there with you. Like I think the biggest part of my journey that I continue on every single day is that mindset component of saying, it's okay. Before we hit record, I said my day didn't go as planned. What does that mean? I didn't get as much done as I had wanted.
Mhm.
And typically at this hour, I'd be like, oh gosh, like, geez, Louise, like I should have been, don't should yourself, right? I stopped shooting myself a
Love
long time ago.
that.
Yeah. But sometimes I catch myself saying should. I'm like, oh, but our bodies hear
Oh,
what we're saying. Like I chose not to today.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
okay. And it's okay that other things came up. And so I feel like, having grace on yourself like you have had,
Mhm.
and, kind of riding that waves of energy of when you have it, ride it and get stuff done. And I'm not for saying like, oh, you just pull back and do nothing, because that's where you get to when you get completely burned out, right? Like you
Right.
just physically can't do that. And when we're working with women, it's like, okay, how do we keep you going? And when you and tweak it a little bit, and there's a lot about self-care, like, I don't know about you, but a lot of women that I've seen over the past year have really lost themselves. Like they don't even know what makes them happy anymore.
Oh yeah.
Right. And like we thought that, was slowing down. And I mean, me personally, I used to go to the grocery store like 3 times a day because oh, forgot that, to going like total of like twice a week, at
Yeah.
maximum. It was huge. And so I think we all came into this global pandemic thinking, gosh, much more time with the family and not, wasting time doing things that we don't have to do. But we filled it in with never leaving our kids because we're virtually schooling them, and never getting date night with our hubbies, and never getting connection time with our girlfriends. And, and because of that, we filled it in with a lot of the other in work. I don't know about you, but when I don't leave my house to go physically away on vacation, I love what I do. So I keep working,
Yeah.
but
Me
not necessarily the healthiest thing to do, So I do think, just building again, as we kind of get back to normal life as best we can, self-care. And that again, does not nowadays look again like facials or manicures necessarily. It
Right.
used to maybe, but
Yeah.
now it's, taking a walk in nature, reading a book, exercising if you like that, taking a nap, like whatever that is. I mean, I like to take a nap plus do something else while you're awake to
Mhm.
sort of, so you feel like you're filling your cup, but and feeling worthy of doing that. So many women just don't feel, they feel like guilty for taking time for themselves. I'm like, whoa, how do we continue to go and give to others if we're not giving to ourselves?
Absolutely. I love all that advice, and especially the shitting. Let's stop shitting ourselves.
Yeah. Stop shitting yourself. That you have to do. You get to do something. If you have to do it, maybe reconsider not doing it. You get to,
Yeah.
yeah, the shoulds they have to go. So,
You gotta go.
and I find, in regards to libido, of all of my clients and, and my former patients in my brick and mortar, 100% of my clients online, all the underlying factor is stress and in a degree of burnout to some aspect. And so that's why I talk so much about burnout as the libidoologist, because it's like, if we don't, of course, if you're exhausted and haven't done anything for yourself, are
Yeah.
you really going to feel like being intimate? No, you're just like, I'm tired, and you just fall into bed at night. And
Yeah.
so, I feel like we have to definitely work on that, and all of the things we just talked about with self-care and boundaries and communication, in order for us to regain our lost libido.
Yeah. And so let's dive into that, because I know this is, and you said something before we hit record that is so true. Like we have normalized having low libido as women, especially at certain stages of life, or whatever it is we think is just normal. And there's so many things related to hormones and all this stuff that I feel like it's just been normalized by society that's not normal. Um so let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, the normalization is that three big ones that I heard over and over again. And again, this is birthed from 15 years as an OB, another 4 years in a functional medicine office, and then an additional 3 years online. It's
Mhm.
over and over. I have seen across the board. Number one, women aren't talking about it. And I
Right.
found this like commonly also with women in OB that had miscarriage and infertility, like they just didn't talk about it because they thought they were abnormal, and they looked to their left and looked to the right. And because the other women aren't talking about it, it must be me, and it must be only me. So I'm not talking about it. So, if we bring up the conversation and start talking about it, what you're going to find is women come out of the woodwork, like the Me Too movement, like, oh my gosh, me too. Like I feel the same way. And really my biggest message was that just because you have kids doesn't is not does not mean that you have to lose your libido. Just because you're getting older, maybe perimenopausal doesn't mean you have to have a low libido. Definitely when you go into menopause doesn't mean. I think, each, because we spend so much time in the menopausal years of our life. Gosh, that's, then to throw out our libido, or the fact that, oh, I'm done having kids, I don't need that anymore. No, there's so many benefits to intimacy and sex that, no, it has another function aside from procreating.
Mhm.
But I do think I really wanted to just start the conversation, start talking about it, and start dissolving that myth that it's normal. And, and then a lot of women ask me like, what's low? And I think the best definition for any woman out there, and libido being your sexual desire, is if it's not where you want it to be, it's low for you. There's no degree of the frequency or what your definition of intimacy could just be cuddling and snuggling. Maybe it doesn't have to go as far as, having sex, but like it's your level of comfort with where you're at. And if it wasn't like it was, is it now like it was and you want it back that way, there's no reason you can't have it back.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
We're just going to dramatic pause right there.
Yeah. Boom. And if another thing that a lot of people don't think about, because I'm a doc and we don't talk about these things. We talk about all like medical and hormones. No, but communication with your, how's your relationship? Because I think the biggest thing that I found also since I've transitioned into the world of exclusively, libido, but let's be real, like burnout, libido, low libido, it's another symptom that there's something else going on.
Yeah.
That we have to address. And for women, it's usually complex. There's usually more than one thing. But, communication and with your significant other, I just recently did another podcast where she's like, yeah, I got a divorce because I was so resentful. I see that it's a huge thing across the board. Women are resentful because of the past year. They've been stuck at home with the kids and working their business and doing the grocery shopping and cooking the meals. And what it comes down to is, hubby comes through the door and says, hey, she's superwoman. She's got it all in control. I'm not going to say anything. Right. And she's sitting there going, damn it, help me. Like you walk through the door, you plop on the couch and get on your phone. Meanwhile, you look like you have it all under control. Right. And it's just a matter of communicating, say, hey, honey, can you help the kids with homework? Or can you finish this, making dinner so I can go do whatever else I have to do? Or can you help, or give Johnny a bath while I finish up dinner, versus you doing that everything. And I think it's just that communication, they're not mind readers. They can't tell you what you need, especially when you look like you have it all under control. Or not. Maybe you look like you're angry and you're throwing things. Well, he definitely won't want to ask you.
Yeah.
So his head had taken off. And I get this because I've been there, and I've really come to a point where I think my husband gets so tired of me telling him what I need. I'm like, no, I need you to go to the grocery store for this, and I need you to make dinner because I want to do this. And it just makes it so much easier when he just knows the expectations coming into the day, into the week. So communication is key. And again, as a doc, and a lot of people don't think I talk about, I talk about everything else. Well, foundational things like I can fix your hormones and I can fix your gut and I can fix your stress, or help fix your stress. But if it's a relationship issue, like that's something that we just have to bring to the forefront and talk about how, not a therapist, but there's a lot of things that are easy. I don't want to say easy fixes, but like put on your radar, like, oh yeah, I'm not saying what I need in the bedroom and out of the bedroom, so that's huge.
That is huge. And I don't know if you found this, but I find a lot of women, like there's so much on our plates and there's just so much going on. We're completely disconnected from what we need. And so a lot of times they're like, well, I don't like, how do I say what I need if I don't know what I need? And so like, just start somewhere. In the moment you recognize like, hey, I really need help with this thing. And
cut the onion for dinner. Like that's as small as it can start. Like you don't have to say the grand scheme, like you said, like, oh my gosh, what do I need next tomorrow? Like I can't even think by on this moment of making dinner, but just cut the onion so I can cook the beef or something like that,
Yeah.
It's a start. And I think even the expectations of just telling your significant other, like, hey, listen, I've got a lot on my plate. I would love when, if we can kind of talk about how you can help out. And, most partners, spouses, they want to help, they're not sitting there wanting this, maybe some want to sit on their phone, but majority, if it's going to make you happy at the end of the day, they're going to, they're going to help out, and they just need to know what to do. Men are fixes. They just want to fix it, but they don't, unless they know something's wrong, they don't, and you can help them fix it by telling them exactly. Again, even if you have to start with in the moment of what you need now, great, start. Because again, hormonally, cortisol and oxytocin are on this little teeter-totter. And if we're super stressed, our cuddle hormone, our love hormone, our wanting to get lovey-lovey with our partner is low because we're super stressed versus
Right.
him, all of a sudden he's cutting the onion. Oh my gosh, he heard me. He heard what I had to say. He's helping. He cares. Oxytocin level might go up a little bit. Like you're seeing hearts in your eyes, not like axes, So, and I'm not making light of the situation. It might take more than that. But my point is the more that you communicate and he does help, the more that your stress level is going to start coming down. That cortisol is going to start hopefully coming down, at least taking one thing off your plate. And again, having that little cuddle hormone go up a little bit because he does care and he does want to help. And you are appreciated, even though they may not say it 24/7. And, one step closer to getting that urge back.
Good. So that's a really good starting point. Is there like any advice you have for women that have maybe identified, maybe I see this a lot with, my women who are going through menopause. And oddly, even though I'm in my 30s, I tend to work with a lot of women who are at more of that stage of life, which is just the way it works. But, I think we've also normalized loss of libido, especially in that time period. And I found like it's not normal at all. And most of the symptoms that go along with that time period are not normal at all. So what input, I guess, can you share around that, or just bringing that conversation to light?
Yeah, I mean, we have to think of when we hit those years, there's a lot of things that have built up that can affect us hormonally, like toxins. I talk about toxins a lot because hormonally they can disrupt our hormones. A lot of the, plastics and pesticides in foods and fragrances and such. And, you've been in a relationship probably longer, right? Maybe you're a little comfortable, maybe you're not communicating. So, and then the hormonal shift occurs where we're going from potentially an estrogen dominant state in the perimenopause, like,
Right.
we're irritable, we're angry, we're bleeding all the time, we're gaining weight. And then the abrupt boom, done. And a couple of shifts happen. Number one, I think this, again, mentality that, oh, it's all over when you hit menopause. You dry up, you shrivel up, you're gone.
Yeah.
You can't have sex anymore. And I think that's part of it's a mindset with like, oh, my days are over, where I have found personally in practice that it is a time that women feel so liberated. Like I don't have to worry about getting pregnant anymore. And they like really reclaim. Something happens, and I'm experiencing this in my 40s with women as we get older, we really become more empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it in younger women more now than I did when I was that age, but like much more empowered and knowing what we want in life and in a relationship and with intimacy and just not being afraid to say what we want. And I really feel like we need to shift that, oh, it's down the drain from menopause on. Like, I just think that's a whole new cool transition in life that we really need to embrace. And I don't want to belittle the little things like vaginal dryness, but there's things that we can do to help that. And that doesn't have to be the reason why your sex life goes down the drain, so I think it's starting with a mindset, like I am just beginning. This is a new me. I see a lot of women going into their 50s like, oh, I'm ready for this. I'm really excited, as opposed to, oh, really? Like menopause. And so I do think that, like I said, the little things with the vaginal dryness, again, not big if you kind of get on it early on.
Mm-hmm.
And keep using it if you can. And even if that means, self-pleasure and just knowing that, again, I've had so many women, this is when I started asking questions about it being hormonal. I've had so many women in their 70s and 60s with the best libidos, like through the roof. They're like, oh my gosh, it's just beginning. And I've had the 20-year-olds who are saying like mine's in the toilet for like 10 years, like since I've been whatever, my late teens. I'm like, there's something different here going on because it can't be hormonal. If I have my girls in their prime hormonally and my other end of the spectrum they're done making their hormones from their ovaries, at least.
Right.
Like, what is going on here? It's got to be more than that. And so, which is why I've come up with my entire roadmap of all the things we look at. But I definitely think for women going into menopause, this is just the beginning of a whole new great transition into, a different part of your life that really can be magnificent, including with your libido.
Yeah. I know I've had a couple other guests on the show that we've had the menopause conversation, and like both of them have been like, I'm excited for menopause. I mean, I've got years still, but like it's an exciting time of life. So I think shifting that mindset and
I just think it's been so like demonized with like hot flashes and night sweats. And, that's because that's all we hear. We don't hear about the women that gradually, sometimes they just woke up one day, never got a period again, never had a hot flash.
Right.
I do think a lot of that does come down to lifestyle. I
Mm,
think,
agree.
the better, we treat our bodies in that transition, the kinder our body's going to be to us when we make that full transition. And that looks like sleep, hydration, nutrition, all of the basics that
Yeah.
I always say it's easy. It's simple, but not always easy. Like to make it look simple, like get your sleep, hydrate, eat whole foods, right?
Mm,
But for that burned out, busy woman that we often talk to, it's hard because she's tired. And
yeah.
it's really hard for her to put one foot in front of the other and be productive at work and a high performer. And then think about eating, cooking real food at home. Come on now, be
Yeah.
realistic. So the steps are simple, but it's a process, definitely.
It is. Yeah. And it's about, those little shifts and changes that ultimately get you back on
Yeah,
track. But it takes
definitely.
time. We
Baby
have to
steps.
reprogram ourselves. So,
Yeah. And the women we work with, they're already overwhelmed. So it's
yeah.
always key to just to take these baby steps, like you said, like
Mm,
little steps. Otherwise you're going to just throw the towel in and just go
yeah,
back to your own way of living. So just one little change every day, build on those healthy habits. And before you know it, after a year, your life looks completely different.
absolutely. And you and I can both attest to that in
Yep,
big ways. So,
absolutely.
um, so what would you say, like for those listening that, their libido's in the toilet, whether it's menopause related or something else, like what is one simple thing they can start doing today that can help? Communication, we'd already talked about, but is there anything else?
Well, the other third big one that runs through is the mindset part. Like how do you feel about yourself and love the stage that you're in, even though if you want, and again, I say this because I work with a lot of women also that want to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's not just necessarily pandemic related, it's just,
Right.
again, burnout, all the things. And if they don't feel comfortable in their body and they don't feel sexy, they're not going to want to get naked. They're wearing the baggy clothes, and men are
Right.
very visual. And so I think the simplest thing is just start looking at how you're talking to yourself, how you feel about yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
know, and again, this is not an overnight mind shift switch. Like it's
Right.
really work because what I say, 80% of our thoughts are negative. Like it's going to take some time to switch those, but that is probably one of the easiest things that you can start doing today. You don't have to change your nutrition. You don't have to do anything else, just how you feel about yourself, how you talk to yourself, trying to embrace the body that you're in now and not thinking, gosh, when I'm 50 pounds heavier, I'll be happier. Or, heavier, did I say lighter, lose 50 pounds, I'll be happier. Or, whatever, when I have, I don't know, Botox, I'll be happier. Like, no, just embrace your body as is, be comfortable in it. And you can work towards that next step. But, it all starts with today and how you feel now and those thoughts
Yeah.
and just shifting those thoughts right from the get-go.
I think that's so key. We have to learn to love ourselves now, like wherever you're at listening to the show. Um,
Don't wait to be happy. Be happy now. Don't wait to, again, that 50-pound weight loss or, or that boyfriend or whatever, or getting that next job or the success in your business or whatever that next, it's a great goal to have, but don't bank all your happiness on that goal because you'll get to that goal and then what, so just,
yeah.
again, be in the moment, be present, which a lot of women aren't nowadays. Like just try to slow down, be present, be in the moment, and just be happy where you're at. It's a process. Life is a process. Health is a process. And happiness doesn't have to be a process. You can have that now.
Yeah. I always say happiness is a choice. We can choose
Yes.
it. And
Yep. Yep. Everyone has the same choice. You have a choice and it's not anyone else's fault. Don't point fingers. It's, point it back on yourself. What am I doing to make myself happy? And a lot of times it comes back to that self-care, like get
Mhm.
30 minutes in a day of something that makes you happy. And again, just be present enough to realize or go back and think what used to make me happy and what makes me happy now. And what can I start doing to get me on that road of filling up my cup again?
Love it. So how can women connect with you if they want more Dr. Renee and more of your infinite wisdom around libido?
Yeah, well, I have a website, but I always say I don't live on my website. It's drrenewellenstein.com. I live on social media generally. I am across all platforms because I am online completely. So I am on Instagram, I am on Facebook, I am on TikTok, I am on YouTube
Okay.
at Dr. Renee Wellenstein. And I have a podcast, Love the Leap with Dr. Renee, where we talk about other mostly holistic health topics, not
Yeah.
just libido, but again, at the end of the day, wherever I can be to just put out little words of wisdom, because I want that woman to be like me and have that aha moment, like, oh my gosh, that could be what's going on, without having to go see the doctor, and really starting her own health journey on her own from something she hears. If that comes from my mouth and it's just one person one day, wherever it's heard, my job is done. So that's where I am. I'm everywhere.
Love it. Awesome. And I'll put all of that in the show notes as well. Um, before we wrap up, any parting words of wisdom you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, it's your birthright to feel amazing. Again, I don't even want your listeners to feel good. I want you to feel amazing. And I want you to feel amazing on every level, your energy, your libido, your confidence, you name it. We have one life and it's short, and
Yeah.
I want us all to know that you're worthy of feeling amazing. You are enough as you are. And it could start today.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Renee. It's been great having you on.